G'day guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, episode 88. Pretty sure that's right. Sorry we missed last week, but today we have a big topic to cover. Probably be the majority of the episode. We're going to be talking about the pass marks for every single team going into 2025. So let's not waste any more of your time. Let's roll the intro and get straight into it. And then Rankin from the pocket, don't tell me, Isaac Rankin!
Yeah.
He's just got the license for a brothel.
Well, I think Gather Round's going to be more than just AFL this next season.
It's at the handle at the back, Nick Dacos to get the pies home! He's done it! So guys, I think last episode we missed, you weren't here. So I think you've missed the last 2 weeks, but you're back today. Of course, here we're doing the pass marks for every AFL team. Yeah, sorry we did miss last week's episode. I think it was the first one in 88 weeks, so give us a break. I mean, we've done a year without missing an episode, but yeah, even if I wanted to do the episode, I was supposed to be back on Tuesday last week, but my car broke down and a whole other fuck around, so don't worry about it. And I'm allowed to swear because we've got past the first 30 seconds, so all good. We should be monetized for the episode. But anyway, you've had your pass marks written down. I told you to write them down. You were prepared?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, so let's go through the AFL team pass marks for next season. So this is kind of where we think every single team should be at. I know it's very early on, but I thought it'd be a bit of fun today to kind of maybe make a very early predictions on what we think where teams should be finishing by, this time next year, I guess. Well, I guess a little bit later than that, but a little bit earlier than that. But nonetheless, I thought what we would do is, instead of going by alphabetical order, I thought it'd be fun if we did it by ladder position, starting from the worst team of 2024 and going to, on the AFL ladder, the best. So starting with Richmond, ending with Brisbane. I think we'd probably be fair. So as we'll start off with Richmond. Obviously had a pretty hard season last year with a lot of injuries. And of course, the off-season wasn't the greatest. They lost a lot of players. But going into the draft, they look like they're going to be filling up with a lot of players. Obviously, the main talking point, though, for Richmond is the fact that it's really for the future, not for the now. For me personally, I've got Richmond not really on much of position, more on just improving. I think they only got 2 wins last season. I think with all the losses that they had on the team front, losing Rioli, Baker, Bolton, etc., I think the best case scenario for Richmond and a pass mark for me would probably be equal that. I mean, I feel like they're going to finish wooden spoon no matter what. If they didn't, I think that would be, I wouldn't say it's a miracle, but I think it would be a pretty fair feat for them. For me personally, if they can get 2 wins and equal what they did last year, considering that, I mean, the fact that they've lost all of that, I mean, they can't do much worse. So for me, I've got them with 2 wins for the season. I'd be pretty okay with that, and a little bit of more improvement and a little bit more game plan. That'd be more me. Probably one of the only few teams on this list that we're going to be looking at today where it's purely on just a little bit of improvement, not so much on the ladder position, or so to speak. What are you thinking for Richmond?
I'm pretty much thinking the same. 2 or 3 wins is... You can't give them anything more than that. You can't see them winning more than 3 games, I wouldn't think. And the only hope for them is that they do have Tom Lynch in their forward line.
Yeah, for 20 games next season.
They need to keep him on the field and have Noah Bolter play back. And they need to just...
hope the kids come through and just have a couple of good games, I guess. Play a little bit of inspirational footy.
They need to do what West Coast did and win those few games off spirit and youth.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best case scenario for them. I think it's going to be a pretty tough year for Richmond. I don't see them finishing above 8.
Like you said, they'll finish wooden spoon. I'd be shocked if they didn't.
I feel like a team has to... that they will be under a huge blowtorch if someone else finishes bottom. And I know maybe saying we're just bagging Richmond, but I mean they won 3 premierships in 4 years. So for them to have gone down the way they have, you could say they were just looking so hard for another premiership that they just didn't see the cliff coming. But I wouldn't be rejecting 3 premierships right now.
Oh no, God.
So next up, of course, is North Melbourne. So North Melbourne is such an interesting case. They've been down in the bottom 4 for so long now. Everyone's been wondering or been thinking they have to start to improve, or else Alistair Clarkson hasn't done a lot with them. I think a pass mark for North Melbourne has to be to finish outside the bottom 4 at the very least. I think they have to do something there. I mean, they've only won, they've won only less than 10 games in the past 5 years, something ridiculous like that. It's probably a little bit better than that, but the fact that some teams have improved so well, like Hawthorn have gone down and up in the space of 24 months, not having to rely on the draft and all that sort of stuff. And North Melbourne have had a lot of handouts given their way. Now, granted, they've had a few players lost. I think they have to at least finish outside the bottom 4 and show some improvement, get some more wins on the board. Because again, there was a little period in the middle of the season where North Melbourne looked like they were showing some signs of growth, but they only won 3 games. So I think they have to at least double the amount of wins and finish outside the bottom 4. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that they just need to avoid the bottom 4. I think that's their pass mark, because they haven't been able to, they've always been in the bottom 4 for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
The fact is that they're bringing in Jack Darling. I think they'll help Nick Larkey to have some other target up there.
Yeah.
And with that young midfield, I think they can do something.
I actually like all the recruits that they've picked up. Even I know at first when I heard Jack Darling, I thought, what are they doing? But looking at it now, I think it's probably a decent idea. Yeah. I feel like at West Coast, the one thing that West Coast didn't really have an issue with was key forwards. Yeah. So when Oscar Allen was there and now Jake Waterman this year, Jack Darling has been pushed down the pecking order. And he has been a great player for West Coast, but he's kind of coming to the twilight of his career. Playing as a second forward, I think he can get, if he can stay on the field, 30 goals, I think 35 goals, I think he can definitely get. And North Melbourne haven't had that second target for a very long time.
Yeah. So
I think that's definitely something they can do. But they have to finish outside the bottom 4. If they finish in the bottom 4 again, it's just... When are we going to see a rise? When do you start to put a blowtorch on a team that's been on the bottom for so long? I think it's a pretty fair point to make. Next up is the West Coast Eagles. Interesting look at it. Obviously, a team that's been on the bottom for the last couple of years, but they still really haven't bottomed out. It feels like a lot of the reason why West Coast haven't bottomed out is because they haven't looked to the draft. They're still trying to recruit for experienced players and try to somehow beat a massive rebuild. Is it going to happen this year? Are they going to bottom out all the way? I don't know. For me personally, I think if West Coast are going to continue to recruit the way they are and not bottom out, or not go for the draft, they could trade away their pick, 3, for essentially Matt Owies. Yes, they picked up pick 13, but they had to hold on to that pick, I believe. I think they have to at least finish outside the bottom 4. I think that's a pass mark for West Coast Eagles, because if they were going to be going down the Richmond route, I would at least say, look, you can do whatever you can go to the bottom, and it's not a massive deal, because we know in the next 3 or 4 years you will eventually go up. But if West Coast are going to continue to push forward, that's your plan, that's fine, but you have to actually be showing improvement, because they've been down the bottom for quite a while now, and there's been no real push up. So, they picked up Baker, they picked up Owies. They got rid of a little bit of experience with Darling and Gaff. But, there has to be some improvement on the ladder. There has to be improvement with some wins. So I think there is some chance that West Coast could potentially push back up. I think that, Harley Reid, another year into him, a great first season from him, I would say. Players like Waterman having a great year. If he can continue, Oscar Allen getting on the field more often would be great. If they can get Matt Flynn to play a good 20 games with no injury concerns, I feel like that'd be good as well. But yeah, West Coast, there has to be at least an improvement here. I don't think they can go inside that bottom 4 again. Because I think that they wasted... I know it sounds harsh for Adam Simpson, but was there really a need to keep him for half the year? They should have either got rid of him last year or get him through the rest of the year. Yeah. The fact that they held him on for so long, they've had a couple of good games, and then he got sacked anyway. So, interesting on McWalter. That is one thing I will say, because he is a new coach, it is a little bit difficult to just, rocket up the ladder straight away. Some have, like McRae with Collingwood, but I still think that you have to give them at least 12 months. But I still think, because of the way they've recruited and the way that they're trading away, top 5 pick, you don't get that very often. There's a reason you get that when you finish down the bottom of the ladder. If you're going to trade that away, you have to be willing to take scrutiny if you don't improve. So I'm saying outside the bottom 4. What are you thinking?
I think they could look at the way that they've recruited. Like you've said, they want to go for. They think they can avoid it with keeping the other experienced players that have been injured previously on the field. I think they can look at the pass mark of 6 to 8 wins, which will probably get them between 8 and 12. Between 10 and 14. that's where they should be at landing.
Yeah.
I think that with Harley Reid coming in his second year, they're losing Gaff and Darling, so that's not because let's be honest, Gaff wasn't in the team for 95% of the season. Darling was a bit injured. Having that the big guy in Oscar Allen, that vocal point, will definitely help if they can stay on the field. I think they can finish between their pass mark is to avoid the bottom four. They can finish as high as 10 to 14 if they.
I think it's a pretty big call. I don't think many people would be having West Coast that high.
No, but I think that if McWalter can play that, can come in and have the experience of the players he's getting in from Richmond that have come with him,
yeah,
I think that could help him go up the ladder.
Well, your call of 6 to 8 wins would actually still have them in 16th if it was similar to last year because there were so many even teams.
I wouldn't expect that to happen again, but yeah.
So 6 to 8 wins. You're saying outside the bottom towards a pass mark. I think that's an okay statement to make. Now to a team that a lot of people are expecting to be the big risers, the Adelaide Crows. So they're expected to be the high flyers of 2024 after just missing out finals the year before that. Very controversial way they missed the finals. Obviously, it hit the post as a Swan supporter. Ben Keys needs to get over it.
I think all the Crows fans need to get over it.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. It's about time. To be honest, I feel like that's not the reason why you missed finals this year. So I think you can kind of move on from it, even though it was a shit call. I think they will rise this year. They'll have an easier draw. But on the pass mark, I think they have to make finals. Matthew Nicks, his job's on the line this year. You can obviously give them a little bit of a mulligan this year because they did miss some players throughout a little bit of a period of the season. And there were a couple of things going against them and there was a lot more expectations, which a younger side, they didn't handle it. That's a pretty fair point to make. But I think now they have to make finals. If the Crows don't make the finals, Matthew Nicks will be looking for a new job. And I know it's harsh, but they've missed the finals since the grand final in 2017. So this will be the 8th year if they don't make it. So I think they have to make finals. I know some people would bring up the point of like Kane Corn saying they have to win a final. I don't mind the sentiment. I actually don't think it's a massive. I don't think it's a massive statement that he made because you would say that everyone expected them to make finals last year. That they have to improve again. But I do think that I still think they have some holes in their team. I think they filled up a lot of them in the off season. I still think that their midfield's still a little bit weaker, but with them going into the draft with a nice top 5 pick, I think they can definitely improve in that. But they have to make finals. I think their forward line is too good. Their midfield is serviceable enough, and I think the defense really improved in 2024, which is one of their question marks going into last season. So. I still think, though, they have to make finals.
Yeah. I think they will have... They definitely have to make finals. I think the hole in their list is... It's just not experienced enough with the fact is that it's either Crouch, Dawson, Laird still. They need that Saligo type. They need the...
he showed some improvement, but there were times when he had a good patch, but he didn't have a full good season.
To be honest, since after the bye, he had a couple good games, and then he just petered off at the end when they needed the lift from him.
Yeah, and
maybe a preseason will help him do that. I don't think they desperately need a big defender. I don't think that Nick Murray or Jordan Butts or any of those are going to be able to take up the likes of the big bustling forward.
Yeah, so Oscar Allen, Waterman type, that sort of type player. So, yeah, I kind of get your point. I still think the Crows' defence did hold up very well last season. But considering how they went anyway.
I think that the recruits they got are probably going to help them in the long run. They need to make finals, and if they lose a couple games, not blame it on, they're not going to make... And then at the end of the year, if they miss finals, because of that game. Like they did this year, like a lot of Crows fans have done. It's like, they lost that game. That was because of the umpire decision. It's like...
I mean, that's the umpires, but... I mean, that's the supporters. But I think putting a whole blame on Josh Rochelle for a point, like the way that they kind of shucked him under the bus for a point for that period, and I feel like that was pretty dog. And like, I mean, I to be honest, I didn't have like a massive arcing opinion on his celebration of the teeth. Like, I didn't mind it. I know you obviously had a bit of an issue with it because you're a Port fan. You're a bit soft.
It was a bit... Yeah, well... But also, like, you've got to think, they've got to stop using the scapegoat in Riley O'Brien. as well. They chucked Kieran
Strawn
into the game into the mid-season, and then he played 4 games. He didn't play that great, and they just chucked back O'Brien. It's like, if you're going to use O'Brien, which he's a decent...
I don't think he had a bad point when he did get dropped.
When he get dropped, he was actually the leading hit-out player in the league, and they just got rid of him. It's like...
I feel like the Crows, they're using scapegoats instead of like realizing that there's a whole team thing as well. Like, I feel like as well, like, obviously this is a bit more in depth of a Crows sort of look, but Taylor Walker,
I don't think they should have played him again. I really don't. I think he should have retired.
I don't like people being chucked onto the rookie list, because I think that the rookie list should be used for players who haven't been in the AFL or players who didn't have a real go. I still think that the AFL should bring in a veterans list, but surely at that point Walker could have been put there.
Yeah.
And I would only play Taylor Walker if either Fogarty or Phil Thorpe go down.
Yes, that's what I would have done. And that's the thing, is that Phil Thorpe, he had a massive pre-season last year, and he got injured just at the start.
Yeah.
Just like a couple weeks before the season started, and that ruined his season.
Yeah, well, I can't see the Crows, because obviously Himmelberg went to the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
I can't see a forward line with Fogarty, Walker, and Thilthorpe. They're too much of the same forward.
Yeah, and especially if you're going to have O'Brien in the team, like, because they say that they want to try and get Phil Thorpe.
In the
He can play ruck and forward, but I just can't see them playing all 4 tools. It doesn't work these days.
Yeah, I feel like you need to have 2 key forwards and then either a hybrid or basically a hybrid or play 4 smalls.
Well, as you've seen, it probably hasn't worked really since 2017-18 when the Crows did it with the 3 tools in Jenkins,
McGovern and Walker.
And then in West Coast doing it the year after in 18.
Yeah.
So it hasn't worked in 6 or 7 years.
Yeah,
so,
well, Richmond in that era, Richmond won the premiership with only 1 key forward in 2017, basically, and then, basically won, really. I mean, Sean Grigg was obviously their second ruck for a lot of it.
Yeah.
So you look at that, and then 2018 obviously was a mulligan a bit, and that was obviously West Coast was a bit weird as well when they won the premiership.
Yeah.
But then 19, Richmond 20, Richmond 21, Melbourne, and they only had Ben Brown, really. I mean, they had Tom McDonald as well, but even he was like a bit off, a bit weird. And then they had Fritsch as an option. 22, they had Geelong. They had 2, Hawkins and Cameron. But yeah, you think about it, it's very, like, even the Swans this year, like even Brisbane and Sydney looking at this year, Brisbane for a lot of the year were trying to see if they could play a 3 tall forward line. They played a couple of other players as tall, but then they realised that it was Hipwood and Danaher that were going to be the options, and Logan Morris was like that 3rd. So, but Sydney persisted with 3, and on grand final, not that the grand final was decided by a 3-pronged forward line, but Brisbane, going into that sort of point, they were looking the more potent forward line.
Yeah.
Sydney's question mark a lot of the year was the forward line. So yeah, I do agree with that. But anyway, back to the pass marks. The Crows finals. Yeah, very much so. Next up, we get to Melbourne, a team that dropped off considerably that no one really saw coming except for you. I feel like a lot of people saw Melbourne drop off was coming, but obviously no one really
thought it coming from a mile away.
Yeah, but you didn't even have them fallen down this far.
No, and I didn't think that losing... I thought most of it was going to be the Oliver thing. Yeah. And then Petrarca injures himself on Queen's birthday.
I don't think he injured himself.
Well, he got injured, and then it just went. Then that's when it all went down.
Yeah, you got that, and then you got players maybe wanting to leave, like Pickett and Viney, and it was
the Joel Smith
situation. So there was a lot going on for Melbourne. They finished 14th in the end. Those players should be back. Well, except for Joel Smith, he's gone. But the other players should be good to go. I still think, though, that Melbourne didn't really move much. The needle didn't move much for me. I feel like that there was another year onto all those midfielders. I don't think that, like, even last year, like, I didn't think their defence would get them through much. I thought they would finish in the top 8, but only just get in there because of their defence. And now that there's another year onto all those midfielders, they didn't really recruit much on their side, like massive game breakers. Like, I'm not thinking Harry Sharp's going to be a massive recruit for them.
Well, they put all their money in Wade Dirksen
a player that I've never, like, no offense to the guy, he may be a very good option, but they're putting all that, like, they're talking like this guy's going to be the next fucking, I wouldn't say Tony Lockett, but they're talking about this guy like he's going to be a massive deal. Like, you're pretty big Victorian club. Now I get that they've obviously had a very poor couple of 18 months, really, like on the outside looking in. So that's obviously why Dan Houston didn't really want to go there in the end. But surely you could have picked up someone like, look at even delisted free agents like Matt Taberner or someone like that.
Yeah.
Like, you're putting on a big like deal on Wade Dirksen, who hasn't even played an AFL game. You haven't done much anywhere else. I'm thinking a pass mark for Melbourne, and I know this may sound a bit like, you're not going hard enough on them. For me personally, I think a pass mark for Melbourne is to finish above the bottom 4, because I think they could keep on going down, to be honest. I don't think their forward line is going to kick enough goals. There's already tension. Like, I don't know how much tension's been cleared over with Petrarca and Oliver and stuff. And the defence, it's great. But, I mean, we saw some injuries coming through last year with Lever and May, which really hasn't happened for a lot of their career. Like, obviously, Jake Lever did have an ACL at a couple of points in his career. But, even May was missing a couple of games. And both of them didn't really have many problems at Melbourne, I would say. So I think that there's not much improvement coming here. I think it's very much on the... They're not going to slide as much as Richmond, but I feel like there's still worse malls. There's going to be some bad stuff to come for them. So I'm thinking just above the bottom 4 for me would be a pass. What are you thinking?
I think that's more of a prediction than a pass. I think a pass mark, they should be finishing in the top 10. They should be finishing in the top 10 with that list.
But why would you say that? Like, I mean, I look at their list. I think that they've got... Who are they kicking goals? Like Bailey Fridge.
Besides, they have a bloody good midfield. Petrarca, Gawn, Viney, Oliver. That's an A-grade midfield at their best. That's what they have to
2 years ago.
Yes, but when we're talking about pass marks, we're not talking about predictions.
No, I'm not predicting it. I'm saying that their pass mark is because all of them are... Like, Petrarca's getting up there now. Well, not Petrarca, but they're all getting a bit older. They're all on big contracts as well. Yes, on their best day, they're one of the best midfielders in the comp. But also, they're very one line. They're very one pace as well. Yeah. I think the competition now has evolved into having a more pacey 1-2 punch in the forward line, like midfield. Like you think of Brisbane, for example, Lockie Neal, Dunkley, then you've got McCluggage, who's a bit of a runner. Then they chuck through Rayner, who's got that burst. That's just me. I get what you're saying. But
then you've got to look at some of their recruits that they did grab. They did grab Harry Sharp. They've got Caleb Windsor. They've got Trent Rivers is coming through as well. They've got some of the depth that he can come through. They've got Christian Salem, who was trialed pre-season and then he got injured during into the midfield. They've got some other players in their defence that did show signs. They do have the list to the midfield and the backs. The forward line, yes, that's always going to be the question mark because they've got Bailey Fritsch and Cozzy Pickett. And I think they'll try and trial him in the midfield as well this year as an X factor. Yeah. But I think that list should be top 10. Okay. That's what they should be getting to. And if they don't, the scrutiny on Goodwin will be huge.
I think it'll be gone if they don't make it.
I think that's their pass mark. They need to try and get back into finals. And the top 10 is that pass mark.
All right, well... Yeah, I mean that's fair enough. I still think the bottom 4, finishing above the bottom 4 is a pass for me. I don't expect a lot from them. Anyway, moving on to the Gold Coast Suns. I feel like this is a pretty obvious one. They have to make finals.
It's the same thing every year. They have to make finals. Yeah, I think this list can do it, and I think they
should have done it this year or last season.
I think the one problem with them is that they got Elliot Himmelberg. They've got Ben King. I just want to see how they're going to structure their forward line. I think if Elliot Himmelberg...
I think with the loss of Jack Lukosius, who obviously was holding up a spot there the whole year, I think that's actually a really good pickup because he can play as a second
it's a very underrated pickup. I think, to be honest, this might be a big call. If he can get into that side, he can be a top 5 recruit next year. I really think he can be a top 5 recruit.
Yeah, I think he's shown like glimpses of greatness, but he's never really had that consistency to play 20 games of AFL.
And the thing is, because he was at the Crows, he was 4th, 5th, 6th in line in that forward line. I think in this team, I think he can have that Casbolt year that Casbolt had at the Gold Coast.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen Mabior Chol and Casbolt like up at the Gold Coast. The conditions, most games are usually pretty good. So for key forwards, it's usually okay. Like around that period, it's usually not too humid. And you obviously get that one game a year where it's just an absolute write-off. Like the conditions are fucking terrible. But the Gold Coast proved. I mean, Gold Coast should have made the finals this season, because they won nearly every single home game.
Yeah.
And if you bank like half your away games, they could have almost made the bloody top 4.
Yeah.
Like they won, I think, 9 of their 11 home games, and then all they had to do was win 5 away from home, and they would have won 14 wins, nearly make the top 4.
Yeah.
So, but they have to do it. If they don't do it, who just
It doesn't
write them off
matter-
as a football club?
Yeah, I don't think that if Damien Hardwick can't do it with this list, I really don't see how they're going to do it.
Yeah,
And
because they've got one of the best midfielders, combinations in the comp. I feel like Jared Witts, I think, is a very underrated ruckman. Matt Rao needs to find some junk. I think a bit of junk possession, because he does so much for himself. He's going to fucking be a cripple by 35.
Yeah.
But he's such a great. I would love him at any club. Like if you, I think every single player, every single team would love a Matt Rao, because he's just going to get every bit of grunt work for you.
Yeah.
But then they've got others like Anderson, Flanders, who went through there at times. I think they've got a great list of midfielders in the comp. And I think they've got every single. The spine is one of the best in the comp. They just need to find a couple of role players, and I think they've got the list there to make finals. They should have a good draw, because they finished 13th.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be much easier than it was last season. I mean, far out. So if they don't make it this year, then I'll be giving them an F. If they don't, even if they finish 9th on percentage, they need to make finals.
Yeah.
After that, we get to finishing 12th in the AFL season 2024 with St Kilda. Interesting, because everyone kind of saw they were going to drop off in 2024 from making finals in 23.
because no one expected them to.
Yeah, no one expected them to do that. So for a pass mark for me, I don't think they've got a finals list. I think for me personally, I think 9th to 13th, finishing in a similar spot. They pick up some good recruits. I think if Max King can have a good year, like a full year, I think this is probably another one like Richmond. I'm not really going to put a pass mark on St Kilda on a position, really. Like 9 to 13, yeah, if they finish around there. My point is they need to find a way to find a goal when Max King... Because Max King, he's... Like, people saying they should get rid of him. I don't know about that. Don't get rid of him. You can't find a key forward. You can't grow him on trees. No. He can kick you 50-plus goals in a season. You can't just grow them. So... find a way that if you... Like, when he was out of the team, they were obviously a lot more potent because they had more options. There's got to be a way that's similar to what Sydney did when Buddy Franklin first got there. They obviously were using him way too much, and it messed up. Then they finally, I think it was around the COVID era, just after that, they started going to other options.
Because he got injured.
That's
when his injury started.
Yeah, but Sydney finally, when he got back into the team in 21,
They
realised that that's the way to do it. And they went, finished 6th on the ladder. They overachieved and then, made the grand final the year after because they looked a lot more potent.
Yeah.
This is what they have to do here. I'm not comparing Max King to Buddy Franklin, but on the side of, he does take a lot of, he's the funnel for the forward line to go to. So they need to find another way to get to him and get goals, because they showed at the end of the year that they were like a Titan defeaters. They beat Sydney. They beat Geelong as well. I'm pretty sure they took Port Adelaide to this. They almost put Port Adelaide away. They had a couple of bad games, but they were a team that was beating a lot of the top sides. They were teams that were ruining finals hopes for a lot of teams. And obviously Carlton right at the end, they nearly knocked them out.
Yeah,
they should have. But the Fremantle
that was
stumbled.
Yeah.
So I think 9 to 13. I don't think they need to make finals. They don't have the list for finals. No. I don't think. They just need to find an attacking way to go, and I think their defense will hold up nicely. I think they showed some signs. And I think they just have to pick up well in the draft. I think, but
they need to do something that they do is get a good first round pick.
Yeah. Well, they've got 2 at the moment, so we'll see what they do. But yeah, I'm thinking 9 to 13. What do you think about the Saints?
I'd say I think avoid the bottom 4. I'd say just avoid the bottom 4. I think, like you said, it's Max King, and they've got to find other avenues. The fact is that also they've delisted Tim Membry and Jack Hayes. They wanted. And
they're relying. I think that proves that they're relying on Cooper Sharman.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is that Cooper Sharman needs to take that next level, because he definitely showed signs late in the year. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. They got to get another avenue in that midfield. I think that another preseason of Sinclair. They just got to chuck him in there. They don't need to stuff around now. They need to, they can't do that. I don't.
I think Filippo definitely with the improvement, he'll be tucked in there.
Yeah, well, he missed a lot of football this year.
Yeah, a bit of controversial parts throughout the. I mean, it wasn't much. I don't think it was a big deal. When the manager said Ross Lyon's a bit of a young recruit killer, whatever the hell he said.
I think he is the coach for St Kilda. I think the game style he plays is what they need for the now. They need to strengthen up their defense, which is great now. Then he needs to move into the midfield, and then he needs to find an avenue to goal.
Yeah, whether that be recruit a couple of assistants to help him with that, like similar to, I know I keep bringing up Sydney, but that's the team I support, so I know them more. But like when Sydney had to change, they brought in Don Pike, and that changed their whole. Like it was basically in the space of, it was almost felt like a game, but it was over a space of like 6 months to 12 months.
Yeah.
Where Sydney changed from, if I don't know if you remember this, I do. When we played Richmond in Queensland at the Gabba, and it was a fucking dreadful game of footy, and Damien Hardwick made a couple of comments about how Sydney were playing very dire footy and it was unentertaining, and we just got over the line, but it was so boring. But that was kind of the turning point for Sydney moving into 2021. They got some games into the young kids, but ultimately an assistant changed the way they played. And that's what I think St Kilda have to do. They have to find something that, even if they leak 2 extra goals one way, they can get 5 on the other.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happens. I think players like Wanganeen Miller, I think he's going to be a massive improver, even though he's already nearly an All-Australian. But that's another reason why I think Sinclair doesn't need to be off halfback.
No.
And Wanganeen Miller can do that for you. He's such a lethal user.
I still think that the Saints really could have used it, that Matt Owies type. I think another small forward with combination with Jack Higgins,
and Dan Butler.
Decent. I think he's over the hump. I think he's a bit past it now. I think that a Higgins type, and the ones behind him, like Cooper Sharman. I think he's more of he can take that next leap. I think they just need to find the avenues. Use King as the vocal point like they do, and just have the smalls. I think they can work with it like that.
Yeah. After that, we get to Essendon. Well, I mean, your point would be, like, they have to win a final. But
Can we just get it over with?
I mean, I guess that's the point, isn't it? Like, they have to win a final. But they didn't do much in the this is the one off-season they didn't do a lot in the trade period or that free agency period. They didn't change a lot.
I think they've decided to go to the draft, it looks like.
Yeah.
They've got that academy player in Kako.
He looks like to be decent. He's a small forward.
And the way he's talking about how he wants to bring the excitement to Essendon, it's like, to be honest, I feel like they haven't had that in 10 years.
Yeah.
They haven't had that kid that wants to jump into it and give the excitement to that forward line. Because that forward line just hasn't had excitement or spark.
Yeah,
because I don't think Stringer ever brought that to him. Maybe once a
every couple, every now and
weeks.
Then. You think about the small forwards that they've had in the past, like going back to Momfries, even it never really was that like.
Even Tip and Woody got him there a
little bit, yeah.
But I think
just wasn't as consistent.
Yeah, and obviously he retired early, and then he came back, and it
felt like it was a little bit of a marketing move more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, he never really brought anything. I mean, that's nothing to say against him. Like, he definitely brought the spark, and he was definitely a crowd favourite. But did he really need to come back?
No.
Like, I don't know. They didn't really recruit much, though, in the off-season. Not many people wanted to go there. I'll be interested to see players like Dersma have a bit of an up and down sort of year because he was injured. But it just really felt like he was going to burst onto the scene. Ben Mackay had a massive start and then had an almighty fall.
Almighty fall from Grace.
Yeah, so
I think it's a 9 to 13, like you said.
I was going to say 9 to 13. I think that's pretty much a fair play.
I just can't trust them at the moment. They're that team that they just never can trust, because the fact is that they do so well to start off with, and then they just plummet like they've done the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I'm tired of buying into it because I keep on thinking, they're going to make it finally. Maybe we'll see a win. No.
Like, they should have made finals easily this season. They had it.
Yeah, they're in the top 4 for a lot of it.
They was set up for a finals run.
Yeah,
and then they just crumbled.
I mean, they lost to the Gold Coast at home, and how the Gold Coast were playing away, they shouldn't have done that at all. So yeah, I think 9 to 13. I don't think I don't think that's a pass mark, to be honest.
No.
I mean, if they can get that, I think it's overachieving. Let's just put it that way. I don't think they have the list to be playing in finals. Let's just put it that way. I think, obviously, it's a very long way away. Well, it's 11 months away from finals. Well, 10 months away. But still, I think that from this point, I don't think that's a real like look at it. I don't really think they can. I don't really think they can with the list that they've got. Fremantle. the almighty chokers of finals, losing their last 4 games in 2024. They were in the top 4. They beat the Sydney Swans, who only had 1 loss to that point, and everyone thought this is a team that could potentially be like a Smoky for the premiership. They had a great defence. Their midfield was stacked, and finally they found a forward line that could kick some goals. But they dropped off right at the end.
It didn't help that they lost their best forward.
Yeah, Josh Tracy, what a season he had. He plays 20 games this... Well, he needs to play 22 now, let's be honest.
Much, yeah,
Sorry, or 23.
He needs to get... For them to guarantee finals, he needs to play every game.
Yeah. So, pass mark for me for Fremantle is... It may seem a bit lofty, I think, for Fremantle, but I think they have to make a prelim final, which means I think that they need to make top 4 and make a prelim at the very least. I think that I know they missed the finals, but they were a team... Every single year, we usually see a team that missed the finals that then make the top 4 the next season. Looking at Geelong, obviously, was last. I think Fremantle are a team to do it. I think they will. I think that they have enough. And they made the finals in 2022, which is kind of an overachievement. They dropped off in 2021 they made finals. 22 they dropped off. 23 they just missed out. So
yeah.
With one of the best midfields in the comp, Hayden Young brings such a unique aspect to their midfield now. Sean, I am so 50-50 on the 2 ruckman. I don't know. It just seems that sometimes it will work, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think that's a real issue here on if they make top 4 or not. Shea Bolton brings them something that they haven't had in a very long time. I feel like Michael Walters 2013, 2014, 2015. He brings something so unique to them that I think that they have to finish top 4 and, potentially a prelim. I think that's where they're at because I feel like if they miss finals like they did this year, Justin Longmuir loses his job.
Yeah.
But they have shown a couple of years ago that they can make finals. They won a final in 2021, sorry. 2022.
No,
2022, yeah. So, Freo, I think the prelim is a pass mark for them. I think if they go out in the first round of finals, because I think this team should be making top 4. I think they've got the list now. 2 key forwards that they can kick goals. Joe Amos, another year into him, massive. They've got some of the better small forwards around now with Shea Bolton, Sam Switkowski. I'm one of them. I'll talk about him all day. I think he's a great small forward. He has a bit up and down with form this year, but I think he's one of the cleanest players in footy.
He was a bit injured as well, which didn't help.
Yeah, so he's a bit out of form, bit of injury, but I think he's one of the best small forwards when he's up and about. Very underrated. Shea Bolton obviously is going to be great. Frederick was a bit injured this year. I think he's great as well. So I think that Fremantle should be finishing top 4. So I'm going top 4 prelim. I know that's a bit harsh. I'm not saying it's a prediction. I think that's where they should be doing. And if they don't, if they go out in the first round of finals, I feel like it's a wasted. It's another year where we're going to be waiting for another, the 31 years of history without a premiership. It's a very long time. So it's starting to get up there. I feel like that they have to at least be threatening. They should be there with a week to go for finals. Maybe even going all the way. I don't know. But I think they have enough now. I think they have a game plan to do it. What are you thinking?
I think I say top 6. I think they need a home elimination final as a pass mark. I think they need to figure it out with Jackson and Darcy. I think they just need to do it. I think it was really stupid to sign both of them long term. Once, I think Jackson being by himself, a solo ruckman, works. I think Darcy is a little injury prone lately.
I think that signing players long term, especially that sort of option, they could have signed Darcy for 2 years. See if it worked. If it worked, then sign him longer.
Yeah.
If it didn't, there's been some signs that it can work, but I think it depends on the team they're playing as well.
Yeah.
So
I think they've got the list there. I just think that the defense I think is great, but if they get a few injuries, as we saw to that list, even the defense, it didn't help that Alex Pearce went down. The captain, that didn't help. The Tracy going down, they lost it all. Really, they couldn't get anyone forward, and the defense suffered because Luke Ryan had to play on a big player. Yeah. They just need the experience and a bit of depth, and I think they've got that. I just want to see it gel, and that's the one thing that just hasn't seemed to work in the last couple seasons.
So you look at, so
I
you
think top six is what they need. They just need to get a final, home final, and get to the second week of finals. I think semi-finals are their pass mark.
Okay. Next up, we get to Collingwood. Well, obviously, premiers in 2023. Everyone thought that they could go again. A lot of injuries earlier in the year. They were picking up a lot of players that weren't really expected to be in their 22, middle period. And eventually it just fell all the way down and finished in 9th spot, just missing finals by percentage. By percentage on Carlton. So, but in saying that, I think the pass mark for Collingwood, and the only reason why I say this is because of how they recruited and how they didn't they didn't push anyone on. Thinking how, I think they have 8 players over the age of 30, 32 or something. How
Pendlebury,
Cox, Pendlebury, Sidebottom, there's a couple more as well. But a lot of players over 30 at the very least. I think that at this point, they have to win the premiership. I know that's a massive call and it may be too much. I think they have to win the premiership because if they don't, their cliff is... if you win the premiership... Like with Richmond, that's why I wasn't so harsh on them, because they won 3 premierships. If Collingwood win 2 premierships in 3 years and then fall off, you got 2 premierships.
Fans won't give a fuck.
I won't give a fuck. I'll be like, for fuck's sake, they won 2. They have to. I think because Sidebottom, Pendlebury, I know it feels like that they are going on forever, but they can't go on forever. And right now, there's not a lot on the underbelly of their team, like younger players. Like Dacos, obviously, massive, great player, potential. Well, you'd think he'd win a Brownlow eventually. But other than that, there's not a lot of young players under there. And they keep on trading away their future first-rounders and their first-round picks. They picked up Dan Houston purely to help out with, 2-time All-Australian. They want to try and go for a premiership. Yeah. And I think that's their pass mark. They have to win it. At the very least, a grand final, but they have to win it. And, they'll get an easier draw as well because they're in 9th and they're Collingwood. So, I think, premiership. I know some people will say, they missed the finals. I think there's a bit of turnover in that top 8 from last year. So, I think that they have to win.
I'll say grand final, to be honest. I really do. I think that you're on the money. I think... the amount of injuries they had to start off the season, they were playing catch up to start off with. Jordan De Goey being injured for 90%, it felt like 90% of the season.
Yeah, even when he was in the team, it just felt like
he just didn't feel like he was there. He was never at his best all season.
Yeah.
Their forward line that was just crippled with injuries. They didn't have a target.
Yeah.
And their defense, I think they need to have that defender so Darcy Moore can play the off
the band, the third player,
he just, I think that will help. I think that will help them, and I think, that they should be able to get to grand final day next year.
I think the recruitment of obviously him, but I didn't even mention Tim Membry as well. I think that's a massive.
I think that one. Lockie Schultz having another pre-season, because everyone was shocked that he left last year to go to Collingwood.
Yeah,
I think having him a full pre-season. Having Tim Membry there, the full pre-season, you'd hope.
With Maya Check, Elliott, Bobby Hill, that's a forward line you can build around. Just even listening.
If they're not there prelim night, it's a failed season. Yeah. It is a failed season if they're not there prelim night.
Yeah, I think at the very least. Let's say they make it on the prelim. And they don't get to the grand final, it's like a C-. Like, it's not a pass, but you're there. Yeah. Or maybe a D. You're not, it's not a failed mark, but you're there. If they don't make it to that point, it's a failure.
Yeah, it's a failure.
Because then they've wasted all the recruits they've picked up.
Yeah, like you said, the cliff is right there. They're literally on it. If they don't get another premiership, would you say that it was a dynasty that they lost?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's a dynasty, but, you think of dynasties like Hawthorn and that, they always had a couple of players that, were there the whole way through. Yeah. But there was also a little bit of turnover as well. So, I think
it seems that they're that year older for...
I can't see them going... if they win it in 24 or 25, let's say they win it, they go 2 in 3 years. That's all right. That's all right. You win one, kind of thinking like West Coast, for example. Like West Coast in 2018, they won the premiership. 2019, they made finals. 2020, they're gone.
Yeah.
That's what Collingwood could face. So either Collingwood go with the Richmond route, go again, and they miss it, sorry, they get it. They get 3 years, two premierships, or they go West Coast. They win one, and then they fall off because they didn't, cull a couple of older players.
They're where West Coast are now, and
massive problems.
In denial. They're in denial.
Yeah, for a lot of it. So let's get to the teams in the top 8. Carlton, a team that was in the top 2 for a lot of the year. The team that was supposed to be challenging the best team for a lot of it, which was Sydney. But then, obviously, a lot of injuries came through to a couple of really big players. Obviously, Curnow, Mackay were the main ones. Wiedering as well had some period. And then, there was just a lot of players out. But they did scrape into finals, fell in, literally, and then were really making up the numbers.
Yeah.
I think Carlton aren't really being talked about enough because I feel like they've been like, they've made a state. Who cares?
Yeah.
This team was like a premiership chance halfway through the year, even like to round 14 or 15, and then they nearly missed the 8.
Yeah.
So I think Carlton's pass mark is a grand final, and I know that may be harsh, but this team was like the list that they've got, the key forwards they've got. They have to be doing something. Like they made a prelim like 2 years ago. Let's be real, like they kind of fluked it. They got the easy side. They got Melbourne, and the week before that, who did they have? Sydney.
Yeah.
So they had the Sydney Swans, who that year they were kind of like chasing the numbers. Like they were chasing all the year, and then like with all the injuries they had at the start, I think they were like 1-5 at one point, or 2-5 at one point. They were 13th on the ladder, and they snuck into finals, similar to Carlton. But they had the list, and Carlton went on to go through. But then everyone was expecting them to be in the grand final day next year, and they weren't even close. And then, obviously now, people have really I don't think there's a lot of talk about Carlton, really.
No.
I don't think there's a lot, and I think that there should be. I think if they don't make a grand final, it's another wasted year. They haven't done anything. This is the second biggest club in Victoria, who haven't won a premiership in 29 years. So what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
I think that they've got some of the best midfielders. They've got, you think of their, like on paper, they've got Chera, Walsh, Cripps. Cripps is one of the best midfielders in the game. Didn't deserve 45 votes in the fucking Brownlow, but he's still one of the best midfielders in the game. Walsh, one of the better midfielders that I've seen. Like in 2020, in the 23 finals, he won the medal. He was that good. So if he can have a full pre-season go through, I think he can definitely be better. He can definitely be on the improve. Chera as well.
He just needs to get on the field.
He needs to get on the field, but he was one of the better players for Fremantle a couple of years ago before he moved. They've got the best duo like key forwards in the comp.
Yeah.
Some of the better defenders as well. Like Jacob Wiedering's one of the best key defenders in the game. Their spine is very strong. They don't have a lot of the fringe players or role players, but the fact is that they're paying so much money for these best players. You have to be doing something, and they've got to find a way to stop relying on Cripps. But on paper, I think this team should be making the grand final. So maybe a bit harsh on a big team, but I think if they don't make it soon, they're going to be falling off the cliff as well.
Yeah.
Like we're assuming Collingwood will if they don't. But at least Collingwood have a premiership. So that's what I think anyway. What are you thinking?
I think Carlton will... I think their pass mark is the top 4. I don't know if they do it. The fact is that they just let go Owies. They let go Kennedy.
Who are their like role
players. They let go Jack Carroll. Yes, he wasn't in the team very often, but I think he could play a good role for him. They rely heavily on Wiedering.
Yeah.
When he went down, they lost a lot.
Yeah.
I think that Walsh being back into that team, he just didn't have the preseason last year. That could help them a bit. I think, top 4's there. They need to get the top 4 prelim night. I don't know if they get it though.
Yeah, It's been like this for a while.
Yeah, I think, and they're also relying a lot on a Jesse Motlop type, who hasn't shown anything.
Yeah,
on their small forward. So if Kerner and Mackay don't fire, which is very rare, or they get injured, which we saw last season, and they were literally chucking magnets everywhere, trying to figure out how they're going to structure up this forward line. I don't know if they have the depth to go all the way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think both pass marks, though, we're saying, at least, at the very least, prelim.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I think it's the grand final, but I do understand where you're coming from. Next up, though, we get to Hawthorn. So, what a team they turned out to be. 0-5 at the start of the season. getting all the way to semi-final night, the favoured team of the AFL for a lot of people, the bandwagoners, and then Port Adelaide ruined it, and then, didn't do much in the prelim. But anyway, Hawthorn, I think semi-final. I mean, I had it a prelim at first, but I think if they can win a final, they do the same thing again. I think that's a pass mark for me personally, because I think that they need. I do think the recruits of Battle and Barras are great. Obviously, I think that's pretty obvious. I still think that their forward line can be a bit shaky on their keys. I mean, Cho had a good year, but didn't have a great year. I feel like that their smalls
he's
were
been very
helping.
inconsistent. He can have a good year and then have and just and just leave it.
And Deer obviously was in the team for a lot of it because Mitch Lewis was out. Interesting to see how he goes. Mitch Lewis would be a great inclusion if he can get on the field. It's always been his problem, though. And Jack Gunston, another year into him, we'll have to wait and see. But the Mosquito fleet of their small forwards, another year into them, we'll see how they go. Jack Ginnivan was obviously great for a lot of it. I think semi-final, though. I don't want to go prelim because I don't think that they... I think there's a little bit of part of an overachieving. I know people can say like, oh, well, they got a massive season that they had. They can do it again. I think they've still got a lot of holes in their midfield. They have a great first three.
But as we saw in that, I think in that semi-final against Port Adelaide, Will Day, they did scrape in past the elimination final, but 2 weeks in a row without Will Day hurt them.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and I think he's so useful for them, but I still think that they missed out a little. They still need another one to come through. So we'll see how they go. Maybe Connor McDonald can go through there a little bit more this year, or who knows, even maybe Jack Ginnivan if he can. But that's the next step. I think that they can take one more year. I think they've still got such a young team that Barras is quite older, but I still think he can wait another year. He's still got 3 or 4 years left in his career, and Josh Battle's quite young too. So they don't have to be any bit better than that. I think semi-final's pretty fair.
I'd probably say the same. I think also I can't really predict how I can't really see what their fixture was like this year. I think it was a bit easier than what they probably will get this year. They probably will have to get a...
They did have a pretty hard one based on the top 4, based on a team finishing bottom 4.
Yeah.
Based on that, but obviously they beat that in spades anyway.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be interesting. Will all these small players, these first, second, third year players be able to back it up again? I think a lot of this year was built on spirit and the youth that they had.
And the momentum.
I just think that the momentum, like last year with Carlton, they went all the way to the prelim. Then they used a lot of their momentum and then injuries hit them.
Yeah.
Will injuries hit Hawthorn and derail it? I think a Passmarks winning a final, getting to the semi-final.
Yeah. Next up, 6th spot was the Western Bulldogs. Okay, so...
here we go. It's like the same trade every year, isn't it?
Well, I said last year that they should be making a top 4, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I said finishing top 4. And if they didn't have stuff around at the start of the season, they would have been there. And then they played in a final against a spirited team like Hawthorn, and they got smashed.
And
a lot of players didn't have their best games. Bontempelli obviously was weirdly played forward when it didn't seem to have had an injury, so that was weird. Ugle-Hagan had 3 touches against a defence that was very small. Sam Frost didn't even play, and they still had struggled.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, he did play, but didn't play the next week. But they still struggled a lot. The Hawthorn defence, the Bulldogs forward line, and I just think that for me personally, I think for the Bulldogs, I think that they have to at the very least win a final for a pass mark. But I think, to be honest, I think they should be making the top 4. I know it's probably a big call for a lot of people, but I don't think they lost Jack McRae, who wasn't even in their best team anyway. Caleb Daniel, again, the same. And then Bailey Smith, who wasn't even in their team. So basically the team that they're going into this season with, their best 23, is a team that they're going into... Sorry, the best 23 in the first final basically is the same team that they're going into next year.
Well, it's a team that Beveridge didn't want to play anyway, because he didn't want to play McRae, he didn't want to play Daniel, he didn't want to play Smith in the right role he wanted.
Yeah.
That he had...
Well, he didn't play in his team for the last 18 months anyway. Yeah. So that's the thing. They're walking in with the same team. They didn't really do much in the... I think Matt Kennedy's a great get for them, by the way. I think that's a very good get for them. He does add a little bit different to their midfield that they're so much more attacking than defensive.
Yeah,
so
and he can play a forward role that
Yeah, that does add something as well.
And a bit of pressure that he does bring into that. Yeah. So, yeah.
But I think top four though. I mean, they've got a list. Like, if they're not going to do anything with it, like they've got one of the best, some of the best key forwards in the game, some of the best half backs in the game, some of the best wingmen in the game. Some of the best half backs in the game. A very good midfield, and I mean, if they're not going to go hard for a recruit, and they're not going to improve anywhere else, like going hard for like some other player to try and improve their list, they must think that they're pretty good up there. So, for me, I think that they are in the top four. They should be. Like, that. How much longer are they going to hold on for Bontempelli? Like, he hasn't even signed yet. No, I think he will. He's not going to go. Yeah. But I mean, that would be detrimental to their club if he leaves. But I think they have to make top four. They haven't. What? When's the last time they made the top four?
Like, they haven't done it under Beveridge.
Yeah, and it's probably, I think, since 2008 or 9 when St Kilda were up there, they made the top four. So I think personally they have to make it top four this year.
Yeah, I think with that forward line, the midfield. To be honest, they got rid of the scraps. They got rid of the scraps that Beveridge didn't want. They brought in Kennedy, who can be a good player. The midfield is going to be the midfield. Bontempelli, Liberatore, Treloar. That's your midfield.
And then you got a couple of really good ones like Richards going through there. He's had some good signs.
And you've got Riley Sanders in the background, who should be playing in this team next season.
Yeah.
You got the forward line that's probably could be A grade with Darcy, Hugo Hagen, Norton, even Waitman can play a bit of both.
Yeah.
Riley West needs to be in that team. That's a top 4 team. That's a top 4 team. The thing is that with that defense, is it short?
That is the question.
I think it's this. I think, who knows? But like I said, they chucked Rory Lobb back. It worked. Used a full preseason on him being a defender. The thing is, I don't think he's a person who can play on a forward. I don't think he can.
I think you have to find. They have to find. I mean, they've also got Liam Jones. He was great.
Yeah.
But they have to find that second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing that they need to sort out. Besides from that, that's a top 4 team. They should be there. I think prelim night. They should be there on the top 4, finishing.
That should be their pass.
They should be.
I mean, with the amount of teams you've said that it should be prelim, then
well, I've given 3 at the moment.
Yeah, so there's only one more. So and we're still at the top 4 to go through.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Next up, they didn't finish 5th. They did go out in straight sets. The Giants. So a team that was a lot of the year were predicted to be up there. I think there was a team that you said at the start of the finals that should be should be.
They should. Yeah, like a lot of people thought they could go all the way.
Yeah, and I think halfway through that Brisbane game, there was still a chance that they were going to.
Yeah.
People still thought they can go the long way.
Yeah.
But they got beaten straight sets, and it was a bit of a weird finish for Giants. It felt empty, really. Like, what's happened here?
Yeah.
But they go into next year. Haven't really recruited a lot. Did lose a lot, though. But a lot of them were fringe players, like Isaac Cumming, James Peatling, Nick Haynes, and I think there's another one. Pretty sure, but I can't remember who it is. But looking at it, that is a lot of fringe players, a lot of role players. So they do lose a lot. But they may still pick up a few more in delisted free agency. They've always done pretty well in the draft, always picking up around that sort of period, picking up and down. They did have a couple of injuries throughout the whole year, but I think they did pretty well. They made top 4. For me personally, with the Giants, I'm putting them to, at the very least, win a final this year. I still think that they're lacking a little bit on that tall forward front. Obviously, Jesse Hogan was massive. That's obviously. But they still lack that second one. I feel like Jake Riccardi never really took that role.
Cadman, I think, sort of did it late in the year. He just... If he can put a full year in, they can do something. Yeah,
I feel like it showed that pre-season that everyone was raving about did show towards the end of the year. So I think that he's definitely that one to take that role. It's interesting to see how this midfield goes, though. I think Callahan will have to play a little bit more because Canelio's just getting a little bit too injury prone now. I think that they still need to get that midfield going. For me, I think a winner final is fair enough. I know that may be a bit low because of how well they did for a lot of the year, but I think that there's still a bit of improvement to come through the Giants and Adam Kingsley as well. I think top 4 win a final at the very least. I know that's I think they should win a final. I think they should be around that top 4 mark, win a final. That's my point.
Yeah, I'm probably going to say the same. I think looking at that list, is it their defense that's a bit worrying? Is the fact is that if Sam Taylor goes down, they kind of look a bit lost.
Yeah, I
It's
do
just
think.
that
I think
he-
Lee did show some good signs at periods when Sam Taylor was gone, but there was a little bit of like we need him there, and that's fair enough. I mean,
Yeah,
he's like the
he's-
leader of the club. He's almost he's up there with Toby Green.
Yeah.
So
And it's just that, like, we saw a lot this year that when Kieran Briggs, he got battered and bruised, and there was the question mark late in the year. He's like, will he play this week?
yeah,
And that was a lot of the questions during the finals. Is that we can't afford to rest him, but they need to find a way to either get a good second ruck or utilize him a bit better. I think.
okay. So we're both saying around top 4
I
win a
think-
final.
I think
Very least.
top 6 is a pass mark for the Giants.
Yeah. Up next, we get to Geelong. So a team that, a lot of people didn't really expect to jump up this year with a lot of older players still there. You always think the cliff is there for Geelong, but it just never seems to be, does it? And in the end, in the recruiting front, picked up one of the better players in the trade free agency period, Bailey Smith. He'll come in, he'll have a full preseason, he'll be one of the best midfielders in the comp, by the end of the season, I think. I think he's going to be one of the best. I think he'll be number 1 recruit by the end of the year. I know it's maybe a big call, but they'll play him where he's fucking supposed to be playing. He's one of the best players after the 2021 final series. Everyone was raving about Bailey Smith's finals.
Yeah.
And then, but Beveridge played him off half forward. He didn't play that role.
And
That's
he
not his
got
role.
and he got lost, like a lot of players do, because it's not an easy role. And it's not a
Half forward is a very specialty role. Like you
Yeah.
think of the Giants players like Daniels and Bedford who did it in 23, sorry. That's a half forward role. The even looking back at the Crows in 2017 with Charlie Cameron, that's a different role. But anyway, I think he'll have a pre-season. He'll be massive. I think that they can go to the grand final. I think they've still got so many experienced players. People keep on forgetting. It feels like a lot of the time people forget like they've still got so many experienced players. Like Dangerfield's still there, Cameron's still there, Stewart obviously. They are bringing some young ones through, but I still think that they made a prelim and not many players left. Like you think of only really Tom Hawkins, really. I mean, they've still got Mitch Duncan, they're planning for the now. Yeah. Bailey Smith, I think, just adds to that. So I think a grand final for Geelong, I think they can take that. They need to be taking that next step at this point. I don't think there's a point they'll have a little bit of a harder draw, but at the end of the day, they're going to have more games in Geelong this year anyway.
Yeah.
So I think for me personally, I think grand final for the Cats. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think about right. I think because also they've got more games at GMHBA Stadium this year or next year. Hawkins didn't play the finals, and Neil didn't really grab it.
Yeah.
But I think another preseason he'll do that. Smith being in that team, Jack Martin I think is an interesting player.
Yeah,
I don't know which. To be honest, I don't think he gets into that team. I really don't. At the moment, what it is, I don't think he gets into it. But I think he can be a great role player. He can play that. He'll be a sub.
He'll be around that emergency.
Yeah,
sort of list anyway. 26.
I think they can be on grand final day again. I think that Stewart. I think they showed also that Stewart not being there, Tom de Koning. I think he will have a preseason as a ruckman.
Sam de Koning,
Sam de Koning, sorry. And they'll just, I don't know. I think they've only signed Reece Stanley for a year because the fact is that they don't know if Toby Conway can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I personally think they should be there on grand final day. I think that they're one of the best teams going into next year. And they're always a team that's always there, let's be honest. So I don't see the Cats dropping off one bit. And I think they should be there grand final day. Port Adelaide is up next. Well, a team that, no one really expected to get past the semi-final. Everyone was banking on Port Adelaide going out in straight sets.
Yeah.
They went on, they won against Hawthorn against the odds. Everyone gave them a bit of a chance against Sydney because they have a very good record against the Swans and didn't really show up on prelim night. And the Swans went on. Port Adelaide, though, they haven't made a grand final under Ken Hinkley. He's still there. They're still keeping him on. I personally think a pass mark for them, though, is the fact that I think that they've lost a lot more in this trade period than what they've gained. I think they keep on overachieving. So I think to win a final next year is good enough. I know that may be a cop-out for a lot of Port fans. And I think you'll probably go harder on them because you'll be like, oh, they meant to make a grand final. They haven't. I think that this team, this is a prediction for me, is outside the top 8, I think, personally, for Port Adelaide. That's just me early on. I think a pass mark for me, a team that's lost a 2-time All-Australian defender. They don't really have a lot of like the defense is still so weak. Their forward line is borderline taped together. I mean, they delisted two of their small forwards who were playing in those finals. So they have a taped together forward line. I don't think Jack Lukosius really moves the needle for me, or Joe Richards. If anything, I think it goes down. I don't think I mean, it's not down, but I mean, it doesn't really move anything forward for me. I don't think that the retirement of Charlie Dixon and Jack Lukosius coming to the team is going to move the needle much. Their midfield's obviously their one wood, and that's always going to get them through a lot. That will get them through against the bottom 10 teams. But I personally think that a win in a final again would be a pass, because I don't think this team can compete for a grand final. But I'm sure you'll be thinking differently.
Well, do you think winning a final will save Ken Hinkley's job though?
Well, no. But I don't think that. I think they've already written him off anyway. I think they're just getting him through his contract. I think, to be honest with you, I know that's his pass mark.
Yeah.
I think that's Ken Hinkley's pass mark to keep his job, to win the flag. I don't think they'll do that, and I don't think they can do that. I think a pass mark for me personally is their list is done I think Ken Hinkley has done extremely well with what he's got. So I think if he does eventually get sacked next year, next season, whenever he does, there'll be another job for him straight away. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people on the outside looking in at Port Adelaide, like I think we're very much in a cauldron of like, oh my God, Ken Hinkley, what the fuck are you doing? This team's been in the top 4 for a long time. How have you not got this team to a flag? I get it, and I see. Port Adelaide should have at least made a grand final by now. The fact that they've choked 3 times, they've lost 3 times or 4 times in prelims, isn't good enough. I think it's 4 actually.
Yeah, it's 4.
I mean, it could have been 4 grand finals like the Swans, but anyway. I just think that a pass mark for me, win a final, because I don't think that they necessarily have a list to win a flag, to be honest. I think that everything would have to go Port Adelaide's way to win a flag. And I don't think nothing ever does, let's be honest. Like even with Brisbane at the start of the season, winning a flag, it doesn't go all their way. But I mean, they got it at the right time. I just personally think win a final. You think make a grand final.
I think the pass mark for Ken Hinkley to save his job is to make the grand final. But I think you're right. He's already lost his job. They're just trying to get him through the contract because they don't want to pay him out.
Yeah.
A pass mark for Port Adelaide is probably to win a final. That's not going to happen because that defence is so bad. That forward line's makeshift at best. Like you got your four players. You got Willie Rioli, Ollie Lord, Georgiades, and Todd Marshall. You got Sam Powell-Pepper to come also in.
Yeah, he's not being talked about.
He's an X factor that no one talks about because he was out all of this year.
Yeah.
That midfield and Sweet is a good A- team, B+.
Oh, I think it's better than that.
I think it's
Rosie and Butters. Yeah.
I think it's the fact is that it can be a top 5 midfield, but there's no one around them.
And it's not consistent either.
It's not consistent. When we get into to be honest, I think Rosie, Butters, and them two, they're very skillful players. They're not grunt players like Drew, Wines, and all that. It's that they need to figure out how they're going to use their midfield right, and that team won't make finals. The Port team will not make finals next year, and Ken Hinkley will lose his job. They pretty much signed his papers that he's going to get fired at the end of that trade period when they got rid of Dan Houston, and they brought in 3 C players.
Yeah,
that's what they did.
Players.
They pretty much signed his resignation right then and there.
Yeah, I think it would be. I know this may. I know we're just seeing you bagging Port Adelaide. I think it would be a miracle if Port Adelaide made the grand final from this at this point. Right now, I think it would be a miracle because their midfield is their best line, and even then, it's not really. I think it's probably it's up there with the top 6 in the comp. It's not the best though.
No,
their forward line, like they're battling for Melbourne as a forward line. Like you think about it, like even some of the best teams in the comp.
You got to think like Todd Marshall's got another concussion. He needs one more, and he's done. I reckon.
Yeah, and
Georgiades. I still believe, and a lot of Port fans do, that when there was 2 years ago when Port Adelaide did go to the finals. 3 years ago when we played
Bulldogs.
The Bulldogs in the 2021 finals.
Yeah.
We got demolished. He only played one final series in his career, and that was this year.
Yeah.
If he plays that one, wasn't injured. He just didn't. Well, Ken Hinkley did. Well, they didn't want to play him. I don't know if it was Ken Hinkley or anybody, but I think having him there would have been interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did get smashed by like 40. The game was over by quarter time.
But yeah, but just having him experience of qualifying final, then the prelim, and having him there is that that's the player that they needed. Yeah. They haven't utilised Georgiades, I don't think, until this year.
Yeah.
And Dixon really should not have went around again after last year.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough.
I think the only one that had guaranteed shot of playing next year is Travis Boak, and he did get the chance.
Yeah.
Which is great.
I know that a lot of people would say that they had a very poor prelim, but I think at the end of the day, I think that most of them did. It was only really highlighted because he had a couple of really poor kicks that turned into goals for the Swans.
And I think he has the right to have one bad final.
Yeah. Considering he's had a 380 game odd career that's been
saving
the team, the club.
So I think Port Adelaide do not make finals. Their pass mark is a finals win.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people would say, understandably, people would say they have to make the grand final, which I get. But I don't think that list does win it.
No, it doesn't make finals. It doesn't. Sorry, it doesn't. I don't think it even wins a final.
I think if it wasn't for the fact that they've made, if the fact is, if we were talking about, if this same team was in Essendon colours, do you think this team do you think that team would be making the grand final? I don't think it would be.
No.
So I don't think it should be given that same point, personally. Anyway, next we get to the grand finalists. We'll start with the Swans. I think that they need to win the flag. Now, again, I don't actually think that's a big call, to be honest. I think most people are making that same point. They've made 4 grand finals that they've lost the last 4 times. They've made the grand final in 2 of the last 3 years. They've been smashed in both of them. So, yeah, I mean, I think the list is there. They have some of the best midfielders in the comp. Their defense is good enough. I don't think it's the greatest, but I think it's definitely good enough. It always holds up. You know what you're going to get with the Sydney Swans defense every single week. They're the, ham and cheese sandwich of defenses. It's not the greatest meal, but you know it's good. You know a ham and cheese sandwich is going to get you through. Okay? That's the Swans defense. Their forward line, it is a question mark, yes, but it should be good enough to kick you a win and score most weeks. With that midfield, it's one of the best midfields in the comp. It's got so many strings to it. Heaney, Mills coming back, I think is going to be massive for the Swans as well. I think they should be winning the flag. I know it's a big call to make for a team, and I know it's probably not as big as Collingwood, but they should be.
Yeah,
that's their pass mark. If they get to the grand final and lose, it's a failure. I'm sorry. Because
I think you're right, though. I really do. I think the one problem with Sydney is that I don't think they can use the 3-pronged tools. I really don't. I think it has to be 2 of them and Caden Cleary. I think that's your forward line.
And I said that. I said it at some point throughout a lot of I think throughout the final series at points. I said Sydney need to seriously look at the 3-pronged forward line and look at Caden Cleary. And when Logan McDonald, when it was questioned, when he wasn't fit, I said he needs to be playing.
Yeah.
Caden Cleary. I did say that it should be fine for Logan McDonald. I will admit that. I thought that he was going to be fine. Clearly he wasn't. So Caden Cleary should have been in that team. I agree, yeah. But I think that Caden Cleary is a massive... He showed some signs later in the year when Tom Papley wasn't there that he could definitely play as a small forward. And I think that's a really good avenue for Sydney to look at this season. I think it's probably Logan McDonald and Hayden McLean. Joel Amati probably gets pushed out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think the age of 3 tall forwards is really over now. I think it just... And I know some people, the thing is, when you have 3 big forwards that are good, it's so hard to leave them out, isn't it? I mean, it's so hard because you're afraid of losing one to another club. I think that's a massive point that people don't really think about. They're just I think that's a lot of it. Like, some teams just say, we have to play him or else he's going to leave. And what happens if one of them goes down? At least we have him in the team. I think that's a massive talking point. Because I think Joel Amati, even though he's not talked about a lot, I think every single AFL club, if they saw him playing in the VFL every week, they'd be like, let's get him out of there.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So The unfortunate thing is that I think that that's probably what happens. That's what should happen. I don't know if it will. We'll see what happens. But I think, Sydney have to win the flag.
Yeah,
as a pass.
With that team, you just has to.
And finally, we get to Brisbane. Flags obviously finished from 5th spot to win all 4 of their finals, go all the way. Fairy tale story for a lot of people. If it wasn't for the fact they're playing Sydney in that game, I probably would have been pretty happy with it. I think most people were pretty happy with Brisbane winning the flag.
Yeah. Do you think that...
I personally don't think their pass mark is another flag because Joe Danaher's gone. And I know you make a point like, one person doesn't win the flag. No, he doesn't.
But it's the structure of him being
It's the
there.
structure of the, So Sam Day hasn't gone there yet. I'll be interested to see if they do eventually pick him up. I feel like they will.
Yeah.
He'll be good enough. I just don't rely on Herrick Kipwood to get you the flag from this point. And at this point, he is going to be your focal point because Joe Danaher's not there. And even though Sam Day's coming in, your teammates and everything know Eric Kipwood. So they're going to be going to him. So I feel like Brisbane are going to have a bit of a drop-off. And
Oh, really?
a pass mark for them will be a grand final. I think that's fair enough. I don't think it's win the flag. I think it's a make the grand final. Because, the thing is, you made it. You should be able to go again. This team hasn't dropped. They're not going to drop off massively. The thing is, they've still got enough young youth and whatever. They're not on the cliff like Collingwood or whatever.
Yeah.
They've got enough there that they can keep on rolling on, which is good. That's very good. And Chris Fagan's a great coach. And when you have a coach that you play for, look at Port Adelaide, you can go a lot of places.
Yeah.
You may not be able to make the grand final, like Port Adelaide's case, but Brisbane, they show that they love the guy. So they'll do anything for him. So they'll be making top 4. They've got enough to make a grand final, I think.
Yeah.
Personally, though, I think their forward line is such a question mark that I think that if it wasn't for the fact that they won the grand final, I don't think they would be talked about as a flag favourite going into next year, personally. But I still think the pass mark's a grand final. What do you think?
I think it's winner. I
think it's
really
win it
do.
again?
I think it is. I think it's one player. Eric Hibwood's there. But I think they've got 25 plus weeks to figure it out. They're going to get Ashcroft. Will won the bloody Norm Smith.
It's going
to be an amazing year. Kadeen Coleman coming back into that team. Who knows? If that team doesn't win the flag, it's a failure.
Yeah,
I really think it is a failure. Like, it can't be one player is the team. And
I get that, but also it is the key forward. Like if you took,
but the amount of times that people say is that Danaher, that's just a Danaher moment. That's just a Danaher moment. He's like, maybe if him not being there, maybe it would just it could be a whole different team, and maybe it will be like you never know. Might turn Charlie Cameron back into a 60-goal season.
yeah,
next
potentially,
year.
but also, do they win the flag this year if it wasn't for him?
What for Danaher?
Yeah. I mean, do they get back? You think about it. They were down by 44 points against the Giants. Who got them the win in the end?
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
I still
That's what
think that with the amount of time that Chris Fagan has, he'll have a plan with him. And I think winning the flag, the thing is, if they miss the grand final, like a lot of premiers have recently, it is definitely a failure.
Okay.
They have to be their grand final day.
And you think they have to win it?
Yes, I do think they do.
I think they have to. I think they need to be there on grand final day. Personally, a long way away. Obviously, a huge long way away. I think right now, a huge prediction I'll make: Geelong Brisbane grand final.
I
long way.
think
No. Geelong Collingwood. Sorry. Okay, Geelong Collingwood.
I think Geelong Brisbane.
All right. We'll end the podcast there, guys. All right, as a prediction and our pass marks. We'll probably be doing a full breakdown of way too early predictions for the season in a couple of weeks as we go. But thank you for listening and thank you for watching this episode of the Boundary Riders podcast. A very long one, of course, but wanted to break down every single team and that sort of stuff. And probably rambled a bit too much. But anyway, if you did enjoy this episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, guys, then of course make sure to leave a like on this episode on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for the support this year, guys. And on Spotify, I haven't been able to upload the other episode. I think it was 86. I'll try and do that this week. 87. Because I was away. But yeah, I will. upload that as well. But yeah, if you're on Spotify, make sure to leave us 5 stars because I asked really nicely. And of course, make sure to follow so you're notified on the podcast every single week. But again, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll catch you all next week.
See you later, guys.